Hi, I'm Trevor Thrasher with 88 Tactical. Today we're going to talk about something that is the opposite of avoidance and actually is called involvement. So when do you involve yourself in an encounter? And we suggest you look at it on 3 different tiers. Tier 1 is the legal aspects. Tier 2 is the tactical aspects. And Tier 3 is the moral or social aspects of what you're going to do. Now the reason all 3 aspects are important is because you can really open yourself up to criminal liability, civil liability, financial liability, social liability, and even to a degree psychological liability if you don't get these 3 things right. So we'll look at the first tier here, which is legal. For example, I'm in a retail area, I look towards the cash register and I notice that there's an armed robbery taking place. Now, if the armed robber is threatening them with criminal, imminent, deadly threat of serious bodily injury or death, then the law generally says that I can defend that clerk just like I would defend myself in a similar case. And it's probably okay legally for me to use deadly force to do that. However, that is just a may you use deadly force. The law never requires you to use deadly force, for example. And that's just one check block. But the next one I got to ask myself tactically. So when we evaluate a situation tactically, I look at my strengths and my weaknesses compared to the exact situation I'm facing. And I have to balance that. Like, what is going to put more people in jeopardy? Me involving myself in a gunfight or a shooting, or me avoiding that situation and perhaps going towards the exit? So either one of those are options for me, and I have to, again, weigh them based on my capability in the situation at hand. Keep in mind that if I engage in a gunfight and rounds come both ways, I actually probably could create a lot of jeopardy versus simply letting that robbery take place. So one option is to prepare myself, get behind a position of cover or a position of better safety, and wait and see what occurs, to be ready if necessary. Another option might be to get my family and loved ones and escape. The third option is to actually involve myself in the encounter, and even if I do everything right and I put 2 or 3 shots on the threat and immediately stop him, one of those rounds could go through him, through a wall, and hit somebody I don't even see. So you have to understand that even doing everything as perfectly as you can expose you to a lot of liability. And those questions of increasing risk to those around you can get you in a lot of jeopardy from a legal standpoint as well. The third tier is moral. So what we're doing here is looking at basically who you're willing to protect and what you're willing to risk to protect them. And people often see it different when they're going to protect a loved one versus a stranger, or somebody that's helpless versus somebody who may be an antagonist. So for example, if the clerk was a loved one, I'm much more likely to stay on scene and defend my loved one. If the clerk is a complete stranger, I'm more likely to let that robbery take place. And if the clerk is helpless, maybe a frail older woman or something of that nature that can't really defend herself or make good choices, I may be actually more likely to try and stick around and help them as well. Really what you're looking at is, are you going to be able to live yourself if you take that shot? And are you willing to be able to live with yourself if you don't take that shot? As a great case, there was a school shooting at a university in the Northwest, and one of the students was armed and he chose to protect his classroom as opposed to going forward to deal with the attacker. And they asked him to explain himself later, and he simply said, look, I knew I could keep the people in my classroom safe, and if I ran around with a gun out into campus, the police may misidentify me and I could get shot. So he weighed both the moral and the tactical aspects of that encounter, even though it was an active threat situation. On top of this, you have to understand that there are social ramifications of what you do, financial ramifications of what could happen to your family, and you got to be prepared to deal with that as well. Society will see you differently or sometimes treat you differently depending on the shooting you're involved in. And financially, it's always a great idea to have some form of self-defense legal protection, such as USCCA. So when you think about involving yourself in an encounter, don't simply say, well, the law allows it, so I can't wait to jump into it. It's a really poor defensive mindset. You need to do the things that keep you and your loved ones safe first, and then consider the safety of those around you second, and then ask yourself, based on your personal use of force policy, should you act at this time? All right, go out there and make good decisions and think.